Oh hey, it's Wes. And it's time to talk about, honestly, one of the most exciting lenses for Sony of the year, the new Sigma 85 1.4 art lens specifically for Sony. So this new art lens kind of reverses the trend of Sigma's art lenses. This thing is so small, it is so compact, and it is so well balanced. When we compare this to the existing Sony 85 1.4, oh boy, it is a lot smaller. And if you look at the front here, the front element on this is recessed more, it is smaller. So what that gives us is not only a smaller lens, but one that's not as front heavy. So this actually feels a lot better in the hand. But does it stack up? Let's find out, starting with build quality. So as you can see, this is compact. It appears to be a very sturdy design. I think we've got some plastic here, but I trust Sigma's plastic over some people's metal, to be honest. This is a very sturdy construction. It is weather sealed. We have our O-ring gasket on the back, and we have a nice, sturdy, locking lens hood for the front. They check all the boxes for build quality here. There's nothing to complain about. It's a 10 out of 10. Handling and usability. Now, having a smaller lens with better balance, that's a big win for handling. And another big win for me is on the back right here, there's a switch that allows you to lock and unlock your aperture ring. I love that because most of the time I do not like aperture rings. I just knock them out of place and end up with the wrong aperture. Also, you have your customizable buttons, button, you have click declick, autofocus on off. It's your basic stuff. It's all you really need on the side of a lens. All things considered, in this tiny package, I gotta give this a 9 out of 10 for handling and usability. Oh, why is it a 9 out of 10? This is still just a focus-by-wire lens, like pretty much every lens for Sony. And there's no focus clutch to do direct drive focusing, so it is what it is, but you lose a point for focus-by-wire that is not linear. Image quality. Whew. Here we get into the heavy questions, because everything that we say here has to be essentially compared to the big boy, the 85G Master. So how does it compare? Well, in straight up image quality, chromatic aberration, I think is just a tiny bit better controlled. Less of it creeps into the bokeh. It's a little bit sharper. People are saying it's way sharper, but maybe I just have a good copy of this. But then again, I've had 3 copies of this, and they were all about the same. Wide open, especially toward the middle, this is clearly sharper. But as soon as you stop down to 1.8, 2.8, it's really hard to tell the difference in sharpness between these two lenses. I mean, this was never unsharp, but when it's wide open, it takes on a slightly vintage character, softens around the edges, just a little soft and more flattering in the middle. But this one, mercilessly sharp, wide open in the center. I still don't think it's as sharp or as consistent as the 135G Master though. That one's still kind of ridiculous. There is some distortion on this lens, easily corrected, but it is there, just so you know. This is a highly contrasty lens. I would hazard to say it is probably the most contrasty lens I have ever used. I'm not quite sure how they manage that. It makes a lot of my presets that I've developed have to be retooled because it starts out with too much contrast initially, so I have to draw that back quite a bit, which is interesting. And when it comes to flare control, generally speaking, it doesn't wash out as quickly as the G Master. However, when it does flare, the flares are way more noticeable and more present. We'll talk about that a little bit more in image character. Although the image quality is very high, since things like the Canon 85-1.2, the new one, and the Sony 135G Master came out, the bar is just absurdly high for image quality right now, so although this is great, it's an 8.5 out of 10. Image character. Now this is all the things that are entirely subjective, just my opinion, and this has a steep hill to climb because This right here, the 85G Master, it is my favorite lens for character. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. So how's this going to do? Well, the bokeh, very smooth. In some cases, almost indistinguishable from the 85. Let's look at some comparisons here. In some circumstances, and this kind of confuses me because it's not all, the edges of the bokeh can be kind of soap bubbly. But a lot of the time they're not. If you get down toward the corners, you get cat's eye a little faster, and those cat's eyes are much sharper. So you would tend to possibly get a little bit of a swirl effect on this before you would on the G Master. Washout is very well controlled, and when you get a lens flare, and when you get washout, it tends toward the green, like excessively toward the green, which is kind of a Sigma-ish thing to do. It just has to do with their coatings. So if you like that, that's cool. And sometimes that can be interesting. So although in many ways it's similar image character, it doesn't wash out as cleanly, as warmly as the 85 does. It has its own steps above the 85G Master. So they kind of weigh each other out for the most part. So I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10. It looks great. Autofocus. This is where people worry about third-party lenses, especially Sigma lenses. You get great image quality, but is it going to focus consistently enough for that to matter? Especially if you're doing event and wedding photography where every shot matters. Yeah, it does. Video autofocus is fine for an 85mm lens, but when it comes to photo, this is just way better than the 85G Master. It makes this look just silly. Now, I've had my issues with this. I've expressed this in my video, my review, and people have thrown a lot of flack at me for it, but let's face it, this thing is loud, it is slow, and it is entirely unreliable in low light. Whereas this works great in low light. It'll catch eyes in backlit situations where this will not. And it is reliable, it is consistent, and it is fast. So, although it's not, again, the bar has been set very high, it's not quite as fast as the one for 35G Master. Doesn't have that crazy dual direct drive motor. It is still incredibly fast and consistent, and way better and more reliable than the G Master. It's a 9 out of 10 for autofocus. Moving on to value. That's what we expect to get from a Sigma lens. So let's see if it holds up. We're looking at $1,200 for this lens. It's the exact same price, surprisingly, as the old, much bigger, sort of adapted 85 art lens. So I'm surprised, that's great. Got the Sony 85G Master. I'm getting tired of saying G Master. $1,800. That's a lot more for, well, you do get more lens for good or for ill. And then there's the Samyang 85-1.4 for $700. A lot of people swear by that lens. Then there's the Canon RF. You've got that lens for $2,700. That's a lot of money. Also available, you could get the Sony 85-1.8 or even the Viltrox 85-1.8 for $600 or $400. And honestly, I love the looks of that Viltrox 85-1.8 Mark II. It has a lovely character, and it's pretty sharp, not as sharp as this by any means. Yes, you are getting a lot of bang for your buck, but you have a lot of options and you don't have to spend this much money. As far as the high-end lenses go, this is great value though. I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. It's just not the safest or best bet for everyone. So overall that gives us 52.5 out of 60. Is that my highest score? Huh. Well, that's surprising. That is the highest score that I've given to a lens. Now, third-party lenses tend to make up for what they might lose in other categories by having a good value, and that's what this did. 52.5. It's funny that this is the top score when I am undecided personally on this lens. If I were to sell the G Master, it's worth almost exactly the same price as a brand new art lens. I might do it. I might not. Oh, this has been my bread and butter lens for so long. But it's frustrated me so many times. Well, if you want to see better image samples, check the link down in the description and tell me in the comments what you think I should do. Should I buy this lens? Should I sell that lens? Do you want to buy my G Master lens? Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm always down there. And until next time, go take some photos.